All right, everybody. We are here to talk about Vim. Vim is love, Vim is life has been my primary editor for about 3 years now, and I'd love to impart how you could be a better user of Vim. And so that's what I'm here to talk about. The objective today, the target audience for this talk are the average Vim user who, at least as far as I've noticed being a mentor at this lab, people coming in with questions for either mechanics of programming or working on Nitron for Swen 250 will come in with questions on how to use Vim. And usually the way that they use Vim is that they will open up a file in Vim, hit I to enter insert mode, and then edit the file like it's nano. And then escape, :WQ to get out, and that's about it. There's no extra, there's no use of any of Vim's super powerful features, and I'd love to help break people out of constantly using nothing but insert mode in order to get their stuff done. So, those of you who have had to use Vim in the past, or hello Mackenzie, those of you who've had to use Vim in the past and have your fair share of arguments against Vim, I can hear some of you complaining already. You sound like Brian. I can hear a couple of you complaining that you need an IDE and that Nano works fine or Vim's too complicated. I have one answer to all of these questions. No. I mentioned this, I went over this pretty extensively in command line talk, but the same principle applies here. IDEs are magic button boxes. You need to be able to take back control of your programming experience, and I think that Vim's a great way to do that because it gives you a platform for constant improvement as you're writing your code. Nano is fine, sure, but you can strive to do better than fine. You know, that's what I'm here to help you do. And it's really not that complicated. Fundamentally, you are the one overthinking it, and that's what I hope to change with this talk. So let's talk about what Vim is. Vim is a command line text editor. As a little bit of a history on Vim, VI and its sister program EX were released to the public in March of 1978. This thing is old. It was released with the first Berkeley software distribution. If anybody has ever heard of the operating system's FreeBSD or OpenBSD, Vim shipped with the original of those operating systems. And it's obviously has permeated, given we still have FreeBSD and OpenBSD. The OSs are constantly going improvement. I personally am not the biggest fan of them, if you want me to be honest. I haven't had a great time using them, but that's rant for another time. Vim is VI improved, and it shipped with the Commodore Amiga for the first time in 1991, and it finally became available on all platforms in 2006. I believe the offending operating system that it was slow to ship to was Windows, actually. But it's actually the 5th most popular dev environment in 2019, according to a Stack Overflow developer survey. I believe they've had another one since then that I could probably update that stat. So note for the next time that I deliver this talk. So why should you use Vim? Vim's highly customizable, gives you the option to use tons of plugins, and it has a massive community providing support for those plugins. It's super scriptable, it runs everywhere, it can make editing anything faster, and it uses only your keyboard. As much as that sounds like it's not an advantage, it is. We'll get there. So, why do people like VI or Vim? Once you're beyond the initial learning curve, it's super easy. There's a big hump to get through in terms of learning some of the basics, which is what I'll be showing you today, as I'll give you the tools to start practicing using it. But the cool part is, once you're beyond that learning curve, there's no skill ceiling. You know, I've been a Vim user for 3-4 years now. I'm still learning new things as I use Vim to this day, because it's so feature packed. There's always a faster or better way to do things, in my experience. You know, if you're like me and constantly revising the way you do things, you'll run a command and then, you know, try to think through, like, was there a faster way to do that? And, you know, a couple Google searches later, you now have a faster method of doing things. It's just a matter of introducing that into your workflow. But let's not hear it only from me. Let's talk about some testimonies from people who actually use Vim. So this is from one of Vim's repository maintainers, one of the guys who actually writes the code that makes Vim what it is. And he says that you don't have to learn a new set of quirks for every text editor. You just learn one monumental set of quirks and be done with it. And at least, so the one thing that I can attest to with this is in development communities, a lot of the Vim key bindings are ubiquitous enough that Vim key bindings have actually appeared in other programs that I've used that are not Vim. So I think the like goofiest example I can think of is somebody wrote the ability to play the game 2048 in command line, and rather than using up, down, left, and right to like in place of swiping, they used H, J, K, and L, which are the Vim keybinds, which we'll talk about in a second, for left, down, up, and right. Second testimony from Vim user extraordinaire butt hackers. People like VI or Vim because its design philosophy echoes that of Unix and Linux. Those of you who remember command line talk will remember that I talked a lot about the atomic design philosophy of Unix and Linux and why I really, really like it. I have the same thing to say about Vim. So does butt hackers. And I really, really enjoy the I knew that I would not be able to keep a straight face looking at that username, but I don't care. It was great. What is it? More complicated tasks can be achieved by combining smaller atomic, like predefined tasks that each do like specific small things. So, in fairness, Vim can seem terrifying. When you look at a keyboard diagram like this, I can completely understand how you look at this and be like, you know what? Nope. I'm not going to bother learning any of that. I don't care that much. Trust me when I say you really don't use that many of these. You know, if I were to look at this, I could identify maybe 10 or 15 that I use on a regular basis, and that's about it. And I worked on it, let's see. Yeah, about 10 or 15. That sounds right. What are some ones that I don't really use? I don't really use, like, recording macros. Let's see. I don't use Z to quit, because apparently that's a thing you can do. Some Vim buffers will not let you use the backspace character. So if you can actually press capital X to backspace in Vim, which is a little counterintuitive, that's not a feature that I use terribly much because my Mac supports actually using the delete button. Is there anything else? Nothing that I can think of. But I can completely understand how looking at a diagram like this when you start learning Vim can be like, I'm not doing this. I don't feel like doing this. Because it looks like a lot, right? So this is where I start talking about Vim's key feature, is modal editing. There are 4 primary modes of operation in Vim. There is insert mode when you are editing the file, which I'm sure pretty much everyone in this room is familiar with if you've ever opened a file in Vim. Then you're well aware of the fact that you can hit I and start typing like it's nano. I'm going to flame nano a lot. There's also visual mode, which will allow you to highlight portions of the file. There is normal mode, which will allow you to navigate and move around the structure of the file. And then there is EX mode, or command mode, which is named after, if you remember when I was talking about the history of Vim, I mentioned that EX was a line editor that was released to the public in March of 1978. EX is still around, actually. It's a nightmare to use. It's hilarious. I wish I had prepared like some kind of demo on how EX works, because it's ridiculously overcomplicated. It's kind of funny. But it's a Unix line editor. It's the partner program that VI was built alongside. VI was a visual editor that built on top of EX. And EX introduced a number of commands that you can use while in Vim, and that ported over. Let's talk about insert mode. Really not that complicated. Press I to enter insert mode. Type as you normally would, with some minor exceptions. Press escape to exit insert mode, and you did it. Did it, I should say. Congratulations on having completed your journey into Vim's insert mode. That's about all there is to it, and that's where I assume everybody here is starting. And we're gonna take this platform and launch you off of it. That's the plan. Let's talk about some of the quirks to insert mode. Remember when I mentioned a couple of those minor exceptions? Copying to your clipboard and pasting things copied from outside of Vim is going to be different based on whatever terminal you're using. So most Linux terminals and Windows PowerShell, Control-C will not copy. Actually, Mac shells as well. Control-C is not going to copy. Control-Shift-C will copy text that you have selected with your mouse. You can use right-click to paste, which is about as intuitive as it seems. If you're using PuTTY to shell into a session, Shift-Insert will be your paste button, and Control-Shift-C will copy as usual. What's up? So the question in the room for the stream is why Control Shift C and not Control C? The reason for that is because Control C in a terminal will end the operation of a current like program. Like if I just say like sleep 100 or something, I should make this bigger so y'all can see. If I say sleep 100 or something, this is just gonna freeze my terminal for 100 seconds unless I choose to do something about it. Control C will stop it. And so if I'm in the process of like, text, hold on a second. Oh, lovely. This again. I know how to deal with it now. Text that I want to copy. I can spell, I promise. If I have that selected and I press Control C, it's going to do the same thing as Control C to end a program will. It's not going to actually copy the text. If I try to Control V, that's just not going to work. My terminal gets confused because it doesn't recognize the control sequence. But that's why that doesn't work. Another oddity to insert mode is that holding down the Alt key while in insert mode will make the keys mean what they mean in normal mode. So if you... What's up? Yeah. Yeah, no, that's the thing. It's kind of helpful sometimes. Again, not a feature that I use terribly much because I rarely... I rarely find myself needing to exit to normal mode to run one or two commands rather than, and then pop back into insert mode. Like that's not something I do terribly frequently. I spend very little time in insert mode. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Are there any? There's also just the like ergonomics. I'm sure I could rebind the Alt key, but there's just the ergonomics of like holding down the Alt key while I try to do anything else with the rest of my hand, which not the biggest fan of, but. It's not a feature that I use terribly much, but I want you to know that it's an option. Let's talk about normal mode. Ladies and gentlemen, do not use your mouse while using Vim. Please, for the love of all that is holy. You have no idea how many times I've seen somebody open Vim and then put their greasy fingers on their trackpad and scoot it over to where they want to type and then click somewhere and then revel hilariously in the fact that their cursor didn't actually move. Because... your mouse will not work in Vim. There are a few exceptions to that, but I call that being lazy. So, do not use the arrow keys either. Remember when I said the arrow keys? Remember when I said that H, J, K, and L were the keys to navigate your file? I'm going to show you how to use those. The reason that those are slightly faster is you do not have to take your hand off the home row of your keyboard to go all the way down to the arrow keys to jump around your file. There are also faster movement commands than that. So use H, J, K, and L to move around instead. H will go left, J will go down, K will go up, and L will go right. I know that doesn't seem like the most intuitive thing. Let's go ahead and show that off. Let's open up a file here, which, hold on, I should go over the fact that in order to open a file in Vim, the command is Vim followed by your file name. Let me familiarize people with the contents of this directory, because some people care. We'll be working in compare source primarily. Sadly, this doesn't work because Matplotlib hasn't been ported over to the M1 Max yet. So I literally cannot run this code, and I realized this like 5 minutes before the talk. When I tried to install Matplotlib, and it crashed and burned and died. And I was like, oh well, rest in pieces. I have, what is it, Keycaster for this. So, did that, aha, it did work, awesome. So J will go down, which you can see me mashing that in the bottom here. I'm not going to bother flipping. It's right for you guys, bottom right. K will go up, L will go right, and H will go left. This takes a minute to learn, but you get used to it really quick. What's up?
Why do the numbers change on the left? Like you're on row 19, but then above you is 1 through 18.
Yeah, so I'll explain that in a second. I use what's called relative line numbers. Something that I'll get to later on is the fact that you can precede any Vim command with a number, and it will repeat that action that number of times. And so what this helps me with is if I decide that I want to jump up to the line where it says import matplotlib, I know that relative to the line that I'm currently on, it's 10 lines above me. So what I can do is type in 10K, and it'll jump me to that line immediately. So that's why I have that. It's really helpful. I'm sure there's a couple of people who are wondering why. There's a very specific reason that I chose this machine over here. is the ADM3A terminal from the early 70s, which Vim was actually developed on. And it's not particularly visible in this photo, but this is a photo of the keyboard, and it actually this keyboard didn't have arrow keys. It used H, J, K, and L over there, which you can see are labeled with arrow keys on them. And so because Vim was developed on this machine, the H, J, K, and L to move around your file is just a really, really legacy vestige of this. It's been around since the early 70s, and that hasn't changed about Vim, which I think is kind of cool. It's also, complete side note, it's also kind of fun for me to take a look at this keyboard and take a look at some of the old operations that were considered important on a old computer, where you have a dedicated button to take you home. The here is button would print out which folder you were in. It was the equivalent of running PWD. To clear your screen. What else? Is there anything? A line feed to go to a new line, because there's no enter key if you notice. Is there anything else interesting about this? The fact that control is where we normally expect caps lock to be. So little things like that I took a look at and was like, huh, that's kind of cool. Yeah. I assume you would repeat the prior command, because this is a terminal. There's no graphical user interface, obviously, and so. But yeah, it's cool to look at the keyboard and discern what is it, some of the differences. I've actually just noticed that the number row, some of the binds are different. The alternate character for the 2 is the double quote rather than the ampersand or aspirand. I forget which one it is. There's one that's missing too, given it doesn't go all the way to 0, which it looks like it's the asterisk. No, that has its own button. Huh, interesting. Cool stuff. I love geeking out about this stuff. Super minor details to point out that I find cool. I don't know how many other people care. Are they? Huh, they are. Yeah, they're missing the caret as well. I could geek out about the keyboard forever. Please don't keep me on the slide for too long. There's also, it looks like there's 2 characters for the backslash. I assume that's meant to be a backtick. Cool stuff. I got stuck on a keyboard. Don't worry about me. All right, we have our little file open here. Let's talk about some movement commands. And here's a who's who of common movement commands in Vim. W will move forward by 1 word. We all know about H, J, K, and L, sure, but if I want to mash L to jump my way through this line, this takes forever. This is tiring. This is tiring. Let's say I'm at the beginning of my line here, and I want to jump ahead 1 word at a time. If I press W, it'll jump me to the beginning of each word instead. I'm sorry? Can I hold L and will it always go? Yes, that depends on that depends on the system sometimes. Some computers that I've shelled into remotely would not allow me to hold down a key, so I had the annoying I had to force myself to use word jumps or search commands even to jump ahead or behind to the words that I wanted to get to, because I did not feel like sitting there and mashing my L key or mashing my H key for that long. It's this takes forever as is, and I'm holding my H key. Manually mashing this is probably about the same speed, but if anything, it's tiring. So I decided against that. Let's pop over. B will move backward by 1 word. Exactly the same thing as W, but in reverse. Fairly simple. It also will jump across lines, which some versions of Vim, depending on the system that you're shelling into, will not actually do that. There's some that will reach the last character of a line, and then we'll stop there. I can mash B as much as I want back here, and it's not going to move. That happens sometimes. It's relatively rare. I'm not entirely sure what the defining reason for that is. I'm going to blame Vim versions or system, the system that you're running it on. I don't know. Control E will scroll the window down. Control Y will scroll the window up. I'm not entirely sure why those 2 keys specifically were chosen, but Control E will scroll down. Control Y will scroll up without moving your cursor. You can also scroll down by bringing your cursor to the bottom of the file and just letting it go. Control F will scroll down 1 page. Control B will scroll up 1 page. Control F will... Oh, no, that's not... Go away. Oh no, I guess I got rebound. When did I make that rebinding? So this is the file tree explorer that I have in Vim that normally is bound to Control N. For some reason, Control F is opening it now, and I tested this before the talk, and this wasn't happening. Not sure what's up with that, but I'm just going to require you to take my word for it on the fact that Control F will scroll down one page, Control B will scroll up one page, and one page means to the bottom of this buffer. So if I were to press Control F and it were to work, my cursor would wind up down here, and it would scroll it so that this line would be, line 33 down there would appear as though it was at the top of the page. Best I can do for now, unfortunately. I'm not sure where those rebindings came from. There is a distinction between capital and lowercase letters. So capital H, so Shift H will move your cursor to the beginning of a line. Or, top of the window. Oh, right, yep. You'll have to excuse me for being dumb. Let's scroll a little bit. If I want to jump to the top of the window up there where the import statement is, Shift H will take me over there every time. I can scroll down a little too, and let's say I'm over here. Top of the window. Capital M will move your cursor to the opposite spot, bottom of the window, or not, I guess. It's jumping me to the next method definition. What's up? Oh, hi, I'm dumb. Yeah, that's... Don't worry about me, I'm fine. Capital L will jump me to the bottom, capital H will jump me to the top, capital M will jump me to the middle of the file. There's also, I think I used this earlier, if I wanted to jump to the top of the file, I can run GG. If I wanted to jump to the bottom of the file, capital G will take me to the bottom. So GG to the top of the file, capital G to take me to all the way down to the bottom. You'll notice that some style guides will actually require you to have a new line at the bottom of a file. This is actually for Vim users. I found out is Vim users got really stubborn about like having to, if this line didn't exist and they jumped to the bottom of the file, some people apparently got annoyed about the fact that when they were going back, they would have to tab to the beginning of a line if it ended on a line of code or something. Some style guides will actually require you to have a new line at the end of your file. This is before I wrote this code before I knew that. This is an old personal project that I'm demoing with. The curly braces will take you to the next or previous empty line. So the closing curly brace will take me to the next empty line in a file. And the, why does Keycaster, it shows them as square braces. Oh, that's unfortunate. The opening curly brace will take me to the previous open line. Not one that I use terribly frequently. It kind of helps with jumping around a file. Sometimes if I just want to find where the next open line is in a big block of text for me to start typing, that's helpful sometimes when I'm editing specifically when I'm editing documents in LaTeX. But I've not found much use for that beyond that. All right. Vim's secret sauce. I talked a little bit about this before when I mentioned the repeatability of commands if you precede it with a number. So Vim's killer feature is the language that it provides for making changes. I like to call these Vim phrases. I'm not entirely sure if that's like a formal term or anything. I've heard some people say it, but don't quote me on calling them Vim phrases. But you can precede any command with a count, and then you can precede any motion with a count, and Vim will then perform the action on an object. All these terms will make sense in a second. As a more general syntax, we're going to talk about a verb and noun combination. So as an example, DW, where D is for delete and W is for word, will delete a word. It's literally that simple. If I don't like the word import, goodbye, it's gone. DW. U to undo, life hack. So in this case, D is your verb, W is your noun. And every single command is repeatable and undoable. I just mentioned U to undo. If I delete this word and I decide that I want to delete the rest of the line one word at a time, I can just hit the period key and it will repeat my last action. And then, of course, U to undo, because I've decided that I kind of need those files to work. So let's talk about some of those verbs, some of the commands that I have available to me. Some of them are pretty simple. D for delete, C for change. There's a difference between those two. We'll talk about that in a second. The greater than symbol will indent, and the less than symbol will outdent, which I learned is the official antonym for indenting. V will put me into visual mode, and Y will yank, which is essentially copying. Vim is actually older than copy-paste, so they use the words yank and put instead. So Y for yank, P for put. Issuing any command twice will run that command on the entire line. If I've decided that I don't want this line, I don't want this line at all, D for delete. If I run that 2 times, it will run that operation. Let's say I'm in the middle of the line. DD will delete the entire line. I'm going to undo that. So, remember when I mentioned there's the difference between delete and change? If I run CC to change the entire line, the difference is, you'll see in the bottom left of the mode that I'm in, I'm now in insert mode if I want to change the line. And I can press U to undo that really easily. As long as I'm in normal mode, so another thing, Control R will redo an action that you undid. Another helpful thing to know. I don't believe I have that in the slide deck, but we've talked about verbs. Now let's talk about some of those nouns where we can talk about text motions. This is where most of my like Vim use. This is where I derive most of my like Vim. What's the word? Like efficiency is what I want to call it. Like this is what makes editing considerably faster. So the A key will delete preceded by a command like D, for example, will delete all of the stuff around a particular object that you give it. So let's pop over to somewhere where I have a string. Come on, there we go. Oh, come on. What are you talking about? Let's say over here. I want to change. I want to get rid of this string over here. If I delete around quotes, I put the wrong quote. Delete around quotes. It will get rid of the entire thing. Likewise, if I use the C command for change around. Don't worry about that. Where did I go? Okay, we'll pick on main instead. If I, let's say, change around quotes, it will get rid of it, but will put me in insert mode so I can replace it with something. Which is super helpful for, when you're editing a file. Go away. When you're editing a file, you have access to those text motions for more complicated operations with Vim. As long as you keep this little language and syntax in mind. So we'll talk about some more of its components in a second. If I use the I button, it will do the same thing, but it will delete within the bounding object that I'm giving it. In this case, the quotes. So let's pick on main again. If I decide that I want to change this to something else, if I change in quotes, it will delete everything within the quotes and put me in insert mode so I can replace it. I can spell, I promise. The T will do delete until or change until. I haven't been making an example out of the V option. So let's say I want to select up until that open parentheses. V, T, and then open paren will select up until the left parentheses. And then I can do things like press Y to copy that. And then whenever I press P to put, it will paste that somewhere. The lowercase f will find forward, and the capital F will find backwards. I believe it will only do that within the line that you're currently in. If I want to jump to the next instance of the letter D, F, D. If I want to jump back to the previous instance of the letter D, capital F, D. Pop me back there. Let's talk about text objects, which is what I've been, which a lot of these text motions are going to happen around text objects. So W will do words, P for paragraphs, T for tags, double quotes, single quotes you can use as you've seen. Let's talk about words really quickly. Sometimes what Vim will define as a word is a little weird. Like this dot over here is considered its own word. If I DIW it, only the dot will disappear. There's a couple of oddities around that. But let's say I want to delete in word for plot here. DIW gets rid of that word. If I want to, I can do this in a sentence as well. If I decide that I don't want the word size in here, I can DIW, and that will get rid of the word. If I say DAW, delete around word, it will also get rid of white space surrounding it. So it'll get rid of the trailing space, so I only have one space in between list and the rest of the string, which really only helpful when I'm writing out plain English, where spacing actually matters, and I don't have to press one extra button to get rid of that extra space. I can delete around double quotes. You saw that the same way that the same way that I could with double quotes. I can also delete around in change around in single quotes. Curly braces, square brackets, angle brackets, parentheticals are all things that can surround your code that you can work around. T for tags. I wish I had an XML or HTML document. I might be able to finesse this by going to. Let's pick on my actual work project. Client public. I'm sure you're gonna derive a lot of enjoyment from. I'm sure you're gonna derive a lot of enjoyment from staring at the default index.html file for a React project. Let's say I want to get rid of everything in this head tag. If I dit, it will. Oh well, not there. If I let's pop to somewhere over here. I think if I dit, it's going to detect the nearest tag, which I guess is helpful. Which, if I wanted to change the title, I can change in tags to something else.
Is there like capital T maybe?
Seemingly not. We have a question in the room.
Do you know how it works with nested tags?
I think so. It looks like it's just choosing the closest tag on the line that it's currently on, which I guess in this case is a little frustrating. Like, I don't do a lot of HTML editing very often because I use UI frameworks. I very, very rarely touch HTML. It's usually JSX. But, as you can see, when I'm running DIT at the beginning of the line here, where I'm outside of the title tag and the only tag that I'm within is the head tag, what I'm expecting to happen is the entirety of that head block to disappear. But it's not. It's going to the title instead, which is mildly frustrating. There are worse fates, though. So what I've just gone over, I've basically info blasted a lot, but what I've just gone over are the fundamental basics to using Vim and understanding text motions, commands, and everything. Are there any questions about this before we move further? No questions. That's surprising. That means I either explained this really well or people are tired of me.
Well, that's the nano user.
I asked all my questions. I think you did a good job.
What's up?
Do you have a favorite Vim command that we've already touched on?
I don't know that I have a favorite necessarily, but actually I do have a favorite. We'll get to that when we're talking about some of the commands that we use in command mode. Vim's find and replace tooling is surprisingly good. There's what's the word? The one that I run the most frequently is definitely change inward, CIW. Because very, very frequently, let's pop back to the project that I was in. Oh wait, that's right, I'm 2 folders deep. 3 folders deep. Correct me if I'm wrong. I can count. I very frequently find myself changing specific words in a file, and so I use CIW very, very frequently. So I guess that's the one that I use the most. Question?
I guess I do have one. So are those is that an exhaustive list of all the objects, or can you do other ones as well? Can it be any character?
I believe this is the majority of them. And I think you can. I know that you can't really do letters, so you can't delete around or within instances of the letter A, for example. That doesn't work. It's mostly around special characters. I have never actually checked if I di dot or something. If I preface this with a dot and put a dot at the end here, if I delete in dot, that doesn't do anything. Yeah.
I was thinking underscore for the bottom of the file where the main is.
Yeah. Never tried it. Doesn't do anything. I believe that's because underscore is actually bound to something. No, it's not. It doesn't. It takes me to the beginning of the line, I guess. Any other questions about this? What's up? You're smirking at me. I feel threatened.
delete the entire line and not the L? So it makes sense that L would stand for line.
Because L is letter.
I wasn't listening to your presentation.
You're actually. It's because it's not in my presentation. I forgot that, admittedly. Again, it's because it's not one that I use very frequently. DL will get rid of a single letter. But I don't know why you would do that when you can just hit X and have exactly the same thing happen. So, It's a slightly slower version of something that already exists elsewhere.
Colin,
So DD deletes the entire line.
DD.
If you do DLDL, as in
DLDL.
so okay, so that doesn't just like if draft
Yeah.
exception doesn't
So-
delete all the letters within the line. Okay.
So that's the thing. The phrase that I'm executing is delete letter, where if you execute any command twice, then it will act on the entire line. So yeah, so the command itself is that D, and so if I run DD, then and only then will it delete the entire line. What's up?
you can do dollar for end of line.
Yeah.
So if you want to delete to the end of the line.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm over here in the middle of the line, I want to delete up until the end. Let's pick on main again. D dollar will delete until the end of the line, which is a command followed by a motion, so it knows it knows up until where it should be running that command. Then again, the reason that I don't do that very much is because there is a faster way to do that. Capital D will delete them until the end of the line. Brian's mind is blown. Seriously, I learned about like 3 or 4 weeks ago. Like, I did not know that was a thing. It also works with change. Capital C will change until the end of the line. And I was like, huh, that's helpful. Sometimes. Yeah, so that's actually something I've planned on doing. Is one thing that I've never actually measured how different my productivity is using Vim versus another editor. I know that doesn't use Vim. I know for a fact that I feel faster, but I don't know the extent to which I actually am. And so the feeling of superiority is definitely more important. I agree. All right, let's carry on. I decided to edit this one even worse. Command mode is really easy. Press colon to enter command mode. Type your command. Press enter to run your command. You did it. Congratulations. Let's talk about some of the commands you can use in command mode. There are necessary commands to know. And this is where I quell everybody's like concern with everybody likes a meme. It's like, how do you exit Vim? There you go. Colon Q will quit the current buffer. Colon W will write the file. You can chain single letter commands. Colon WQ will write the file and then quit. Or you could be a Chad and just use colon X, which saves and quits in one letter. You can append an A to all of those commands to also do it to all open buffers. So if I remember when I said I had a file tree over here, I can open multiple files. And if I decide that I want to exit, if I colon X only one of these, it will exit only the one file that I opened. Let's pull up this one. Come on. Give me that. We'll close that one. Yeah, I stole these files from the CS department when I was taking CS1. I wrote up a quick personal project with them. Nothing too big. What's up?
So when you have two files pull up, how do you switch?
It's supposed to be leader, so Control W and then H, J, K, or L will go left, down, up, right, like the same way that it does in a file. Control W will put you in window mode. I'm supposed to have them bound to space W followed by, or no, I don't have the W yet. I forgot. I haven't updated my vimRC on this machine yet. I'll talk about customizing commands later. But rather than having to type out Control W every single time, I have it bound to just space followed by the button that I want to do to jump across windows, because I use multi-view buffers like this a lot. Which it's super helpful. Jumping around between them can be something to get used to, especially some of the rules around like if I have like sub panes within split panes. Like if I had one big file off to the left, and then two on top and down here. I wonder if I can actually, if I hit I on that, yeah, there we go. And so some of the oddities around like if I were to like jump left from here, am I going to wind up in the top file or the bottom file? And so little things like that are just to get used to. You'll usually wind up in the top file. Super minor things, but anyway, I now have all of these files open. I don't feel like colon Xing all of them because that was not ideal. That took way too long. I don't like it. Let's go ahead and set the same thing up. And then let's open U. If I want to exit all of these, colon X followed by an A will run exit on all buffers. That's what XA means. Kicks me out of the entire thing. Another one that's super useful is if you want to jump to a specific line number, which I will normally do like after encountering an error, is like, oh, the error's on line The error's on line 95, right? Cool. Colon 95. I don't even think this file's... Oh, this file is 95 lines long. We're on line 95. Super helpful for jumping around a file, finding errors really quickly. Run it. It'll tell you that there's an error on a particular line. Open up that file, colon, line number, jump you there. You can see it immediately. Again, not absolutely necessary, but super helpful. Commands that you can do cool stuff with. Colon read will read in the output of any other command. Let's say... Let's open up a new file here. By the way, you can use Vim to create files. If I give it... So let's go ahead and ls in here so people can see what's in here. Thanks, Tim. If I open up a file that doesn't exist in this directory, and then I say print, there's now a test.py in the folder. You can write new files using Vim that way. So, and then, of course, you gotta say hello world. Let's go ahead and open up test.py. If I decide that I want this file to contain the contents of a directory, I can colon read and then ls-la. Oh, come on. What do you mean? I'm not sure why that's happening, actually. What's up? It's... So if I wanted to read in something like the output of the ls command, so probably that might work actually. Aha, it is. Okay, so yeah, you're right. I forgot that on the slide. That's on my. Let's get rid of that. Colon read will read in the output of any other command, and what I forgot to mention is that the exclamation mark or the bang character will tell Vim that whatever command I'm about to run here, the rest of it, I want you to run it in my shell. So if I run ls, it'll actually get the names of all the files, read it into the buffer, and just plant it over there, which is helpful if I want the output of a command to be in here. Depending on what I'm doing, that's a situational thing that I'll use. Not terribly frequently, but it's a thing that works. Colon norm will execute a sequence of keys as though you were in normal mode. We have a question. What's up?
So if you were to run like a program,
yeah.
in that,
There are times that I will use it to insert if I'm drafting an email or something. Sometimes I'll do that in Vim just because it's faster editing in here, and then I'll copy that into my actual Gmail buffer. If I want to send an error to a professor, then I can run my code from within Vim. That's one of the few situational cases where I've used it. It's not one that I use terribly frequently. I've definitely used it in assignments where I needed program output in like a text buffer or something that I was submitting. All right. Any other questions about the read command, by the way? Okay, cool. Moving on to the norm command, we'll execute a sequence of keys as though you were in normal mode. That seems kind of pointless, given, you can just run the command in normal mode, right? Where that becomes helpful is if you want to run things across multiple lines. If I decide that I want to comment out all of this, I can colon norm, which, by the way, I should mention, capital V to enter visual line mode to select an entire line. And then I'm just using my J key to scroll down. When I'm in visual mode, I can jump around a file. If I wanted to jump all the way down to the bottom, capital G will do that. GG will take me to the top. But we'll go here instead. If I run colon norm, and then let's say I want to comment out all of that code. The way to do that is capital I will put me in insert mode at the beginning of a line. And then I want to enter a hashtag space. If I hit enter, that comments out everything. So super helpful for a repeatable task if I want to comment out entire blocks of code. And if I want to get rid of that, I can also select it again, and then colon norm, and then I believe, let's use the caret to put me at the beginning of the line, and the DAW to delete the word as well as the space around the hashtag, and that will get rid of it. That's not the best use case for it. There are plugins that will do commenting and uncommenting for you with the same way that most IDEs do with control / to do it really easily. But I've definitely found myself using that command a lot. Super helpful to have. Colon map will rebind your keys to do different things. I'm not going to demonstrate this in Vim, but I'll talk about it later when talking about vimrc files. And then colon set will change your Vim settings. Remember when we were talking about the fact that I have relative line numbers? Running that command will give you relative line numbers. So,
How you turn it off?
what's up?
How you turn them off?
That's a good question. I do not know. I don't know how to turn them off because I never use not relative line numbers. If I need to jump to a specific line, that's what I have like colon followed by line number for, right? Let's see. Any questions? If I want to turn it off, it's no. Oh, that sounds right. No relative is all one word? Huh. Okay, now I know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. Clarification from someone in the room for the stream is set followed by the word no, and then the like thing that you're trying to unset will undo it. I didn't know that. I normally have I have a very specific set of things that I will set before I enter Vim, and so I just kind of let those run in the vimrc, and then I never have to undo them, and so I never actually learned how to undo those. Nor have I ever been in a situation where I needed to. Admittedly, I like a lot of my settings are just things that most people don't really care about. I have a couple of helpful leader mappings that are nice, but nothing that's ever intruded on anybody else's experience using Vim on my computer. But then again, that's such a rare thing because who would be using Vim on my computer, right? And why? Please get out. But yeah, so you can set up custom commands that run at the beginning of any file by setting up a vimrc, which I'll show you mine later on. And also, another thing to be privy to is learn about mapping your leader key. You know, it's the first step towards like truly customizing Vim and giving yourself your own custom commands that you can run to do things. I have a couple of helpful ones that will say, you know, let's say I say space M, will place a marker in a file. And then anytime I need to jump back to that, I can press space, space, it will delete it. It will jump me to where it is, delete it, and then put me in insert mode so that I can start typing, which is super helpful a lot of the time. That's actually something, so you'll see that I had to undo that. Oops, oh no. You'll see that I had to undo that, and it actually reinserted that. I need to figure out a way around that, is make sure that it doesn't actually bring back the like marker that I placed when I'm undoing anything, which has been frustrating in the past. But there are worse fates. But yeah, mapping your leader key is nice. Oh yeah, wait, I forgot. This is where I show the vimrc. Let's open up where I have my Vim configuration, which is I have syntax on to give me syntax highlighting. I have no compatible. So what no compatible does is Vim will also occasionally try to be like its predecessor, VI. Which, you know, if you're still using VI, you're either old or you fear change. No error bells means that I'm not getting any annoying terminal bells if I mash H while I'm already at the beginning of a line. Normally this would throw like error bells. The lovely little Windows like chord that plays every time you encounter an error, it would spam that if I were to mash this. A relative number gives me relative line numbers. This will force all tabs to be 4 characters. This will, whenever I'm indenting or dedenting, will also make them 4 characters. Expand tab will make it so that if I press the tab character, it will replace that tab with 4 spaces instead, which is helpful for language-specific stuff like Python. Lots and lots of like set things that I have over here that make my life a lot easier. And the documentation on Vim and what all of these are, what they do, is super comprehensive. I highly recommend reading the docs. They're great. I have a bunch of plugins that I use that make my life easier. This will allow me to render LaTeX live in my terminal. Nerdtree is what I have this is what gives me this, what's the word? This directory viewer here. Undo tree will, hold on. Undo tree, if you want me to be honest, I don't remember how to open undo tree. But undo tree gives me a little more intelligent use of the undo feature in Vim. Vim is really, really diligent about keeping track of everything that you do. Like every single edit that you make since opening a file, it will keep track of. Undo tree will allows me to keep track of changes that were made to a file from the last time that I opened it as well as the time before that. So I have a complete history of every edit that I've ever made to a file. And it also gives me a ton of options for branching edits. So if I make a change, undo it, and then make a different change, the change that I made originally is not lost. It's maintained as a branch that I can go back to. And that's been really helpful for testing things out. So I'll create like 5 or 6 branches where I test different things, and we'll bounce between them with single clicks, which is not a feature that I've used terribly frequently recently. There's no specific reason for that. Vim man will give me man pages in Vim. TypeScript gives me better support for writing TypeScript. Fugitive is a Git plugin that allows me to, if I'm in a Git repository, if I ever make an edit to a file, I will be able to see the change list in the left side alongside my line numbers. A lot like you can in VS Code with like little color-coded markers for it. Ripgrep gives me the ability to search directories. Monotonic is the color theme that I use, which is lots of whites and blues because colorblind. Emmet allows me to do HTML Emmet tag expansions, if anybody's familiar with what that is. What is it? Again, don't remember how to do it because I don't write a lot of HTML, but it allows me to essentially do stuff like if I were to say HTML has a head tag, has a body tag, within the, or hold on, a caret to go up a level. I want this to have a title, a body tag, followed by, I don't know, 5 like P tags or something. And if I just hit enter on this in an HTML file, it would actually expand that into a full HTML hierarchy, which is really nice for structuring a web page. And then I use, oops. No. Come on, Vim, don't fail me now. And then I use Lightline, which Lightline is a little line that you see at the bottom over there that gives me the mode that I'm in, the current file that I'm editing. If I believe that plus sign will show me if there have been any changes that were made since I edited the file. It will tell me what operating system I'm on, the encoding that I'm using, whether I'm using Vim, and whether I'm using Vim or not. The reason that this matters is if you're using Vim has a couple of forks like NeoVim or GVim. If you're using either of those, it will tell you which one you're using down here, because there are people that use multiple. The percentage that I'm through the file, and then the line and the character number on that line that I'm on. So one little status bar gives me a lot of information about where I am, where I need to be. The character number has been helpful for adhering to a lot of repositories that I've worked in and contributed to have actually requested that no line of code be longer than 80 characters, which is a standard because that's how many characters you can like horizontally fit onto a screen when you print a lot of the time. And so 80 characters is like a rule of thumb for how long a line of code should be. Highly recommend sticking to that, like independent of the fact that independent of using Vim, just general advice, keep your lines of code shorter than 80 characters. Good rule of thumb to follow. Unless you're writing something cursed like a list comprehension, in which case go crazy because you're already breaking the rules. But yeah, are there any questions about that? What's up?
What is a vimrc command that you think people should always put in?
Something that I think people should always put in: set no swap file. This is a controversial one because so anybody who's used Vim recently will sometimes open up like a Vim file, and you'll get a little error that's like, hey, we found a swap file for this. What do you want us to do with that? Vim will create a swap file when you sometimes when you exit a buffer. Vim will create a swap file that is Vim's attempt to back up any edits that you made because it thinks that something went wrong while trying to write your buffer. Vim is extremely paranoid about when this happens, and so it generates swap files all the time for very often no reason. And I have genuinely never used a swap file to properly recover a file. Like, it's never ever been useful. This is like, that's what Git is for, right? And I'm one of the crazy people that version controls everything. And so I decided to set no swap file, and it means that I don't encounter that error anymore because I'm telling Vim to not create that anymore. Any other questions? What's
Where
up?
are all these plugins from? Are they like
GitHub.
yeah, okay.
Yep. So all of these are literally just like names of GitHub repos. Like if I were to, github.com/ followed by this text, it would take me to the repo where the plugin is maintained. What's up?
So I see at the bottom that you have the near tech plugin. So that for tech part in the curly brace, is that saying enable this plugin in
Specifically in .tx files, which is it's really nice. It means that I don't. There's a couple of commands that I think the plugin uses that conflict with other Vim commands, which is the reason that they have that. It's really nice. I really like that. I wish I could show it off on this computer, but I can't. Is the ability to have a LaTeX file live refresh while I'm editing the LaTeX, so that I don't have to recompile every time, because compiling LaTeX takes forever. It's one of my frustrations with writing it, as much as I enjoy it. Oh, and I should also talk about some of the other stuff over here. Is I'm not going to go over all of this stuff because most of this stuff is just settings for other plugins that I have. But over here is where I do all of the remapping. Remember that, so I changed my leader key to be the spacebar. I changed my leader key to be the spacebar over here. And so whenever I hit space, it has interpreted as hitting leader. And then I can follow that with another command that I have remapped to something else. Oh yeah, remember when I said I didn't remember how to open undo tree? There you go. This gives me a cool little branching view of all of the edits that I've made to a file, which is really nice.
days ago?
What's up?
20 days ago.
Yeah, what did I change 20 days ago? Oh yeah, I got rid of a plugin is what I did. All right, well, good to know. If I want to place a marker, the same marker that I talked about in the file, space M will do that. This is the command that I have defined for that, is I will map leader followed by M to enter insert mode and then put in this character sequence and then hit the escape key. So it's literally just simulating actual Vim actions. And you can bind, you can create your own custom keybinds by remapping your leader key to a button that's more accessible. I believe by default, it's actually the / is the default leader key in Vim. I was not the biggest fan of that. I like the accessibility of my spacebar. I've got 2 big fingers on it at any point in time. And so that's super helpful. Are there any final questions? One from the back.
I'm running them on Linux, so sometimes I need to copy some code from somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
I try to paste it on the one, but it doesn't seem to work. I tried
So you're copying from outside of Vim and trying to put it inside Vim. So at least the way that I do that, so depending on your terminal, Control-Shift-V will paste sometimes, or Shift-Insert, or right-click will paste. And that depends on what system you're on. And so those, in that order, are the options that I would run down to try pasting something. And obviously, make sure you're in insert mode. I've definitely fallen victim to sometimes not being being in normal mode and mashing Control-Shift-V. I'm like, where's my text? Right? There is a way. I remember looking this up once, but I remember looking this up but being interrupted by something, so I never finished looking this up. There is a way to paste from your actual clipboard in Vim using the P command for put. There's a particular register that you can read from, and so registers is a whole other discussion on one of Vim's really cool features. You can copy and paste to different registers, so you can have multiple things on a clipboard that you can paste at any point in time. Again, not a feature that I found a terrible amount of use for, but there is a register that's bound to your system clipboard, if I remember correctly. I don't know what it is offhand, though. Any other questions? On that note, that's all from me, folks. I appreciate you coming by. If there are any final questions, feel free to ask them now. You can find the side deck at /go/vim-talk/slides. Thanks, everyone.